gamers, this is Mike G here, and today I want to try something a little bit different. But of course, like with most of my videos, this is going to be set around versus. The big difference is this time we are doing a little new thing called fusion. Now, the inspiration of this idea is really two things. The first of which are crossovers that we have often seen now and then between Marvel and DC, in which they once fused together and became the Amalgam Universe, which is where you had a lot of the Marvel and DC characters combined. And the second is Vegito and Gogeta, where if it was either through the fusion dance or the earrings, Goku and Vegeta would fuse into one singular, extremely powerful combatant to take on the various threats throughout Dragon Ball. So with that in mind, we're going to get a little bit experimental today and ask the question, who would win between Symbiotic Superman and Speedforce Juggernaut? So in order to answer this properly, we need to first know exactly what it is that we're dealing with from both sides of each character. So in case anybody watching this are not aware of what we are talking about, we will start off by going through an in-depth rundown on the powers and abilities of the characters that are being fused together, and then talk about what a Symbiotic Superman and a Speedforce Juggernaut would be capable of. And of course, in the end, answer the question, who would win between the two? So, starting off with our first creation here, we have Symbiotic Superman, which is a fusion of Venom from the Marvel universe and of course Superman from the DC universe, which I also want to give credit of this idea, by the way, to Rico Chico Maliko, because Rico, you're a badass, and that is a really freaking awesome idea. Anyway, with that said, as anyone with any degree of familiarity with Superman knows, is that he's one of the strongest characters in the DC universe, as due to his Kryptonian anatomy, his cells are able to draw and store solar energy from yellow and blue suns so he can access his powers, as he possesses super strength that allows him to lift objects of immense mass, as in the case when he demonstrated the ability to bench press a machine that was able to replicate the weight of the Earth, which he also proceeded to do for 5 days straight. And he's made remarks that his punches alone are capable of destroying planets and has proven the ability to destroy asteroids and even meteors. In fact, Hal Jordan's Green Lantern has stated that Superman is so strong that it would take 100% of his concentration and willpower with no distractions in any form or fashion to contain him in one of his constructs. Now, as far as Superman's durability goes, we have seen him tank a blast that is equivalent to nearly 1 million nuclear warheads, survived a cosmic radiation storm, 3 disintegration beams at once, a supernova, and even Darkseid's Omega Beam, a feat that was thought to be impossible, as the Omega Beam is the most powerful attack in the DC universe. Now, this impressive strength and durability is also complemented by super speed and flight, showing on more than one occasion to catch bullets, leave the Earth within seconds, escaping a black hole, and even flying the unconscious body of Darkseid to the edge of the universe to entrap him in the Source Wall. Now, while the list of these feats are extremely impressive, Superman's powers do not end with super strength, durability, and speed. But instead, he also possesses a genius-level intellect, enhanced senses, X-ray and microscopic vision, heat vision, super ice breath, and amongst other powers. So really the list goes on and on, as he can basically do almost anything. So that covers Superman. But what would happen if we bonded him with Venom? Well, Venom is part of an alien race called the Clintar that has bonded with various hosts throughout its history, like Spider-Man, Eddie Brock, and Flash Thompson. Now, once it bonds with a host, the symbiote, or as in this case, the Venom symbiote, confers on that individual a variety of powers and enhances them even further. The foremost among these are, of course, super strength, durability, speed, stamina, and an extremely potent healing factor that allows the host to instantaneously regenerate from impalements and even being decapitated. Now, the symbiote also allows the host to recall the memories of every previous host, as well as use their previous abilities. And so because the Venom symbiote previously bonded with Spider-Man, New hosts like Eddie or Flash can crawl up walls and perform all the same things as Spider-Man can, including his spider sense. Now, the spider sense is an ability that operates as a tingling sensation in the brain that increases in intensity based on the severity of the threat, which in lamest terms means that it alerts characters like Spider-Man or Venom to a pending danger and allows them to react to threats almost instantaneously. As the more dangerous the opponent is or how close the attack is going to be, the more intense the spider sense will become. However, it's really important to keep in mind that while this ability may be able to detect every incoming attack, it is limited by the speed as well as the reflexes and extraordinary sense of balance. Meaning, if someone or something is far superior in speed, characters like Spider-Man won't be able to keep up even if he senses the danger ahead. Now, the symbiote can also manipulate itself into camouflage that is capable of disguising its host and even turning invisible. Furthermore, the symbiote can morph parts of the host's body into other objects, such as sharp-edged weapons like spikes, blades, or even axes. Similarly, when the symbiote bonded with Scorpion, it was able to recreate his tail in order to mimic the Scorpion costume. Now, this is of course compounded by the fact that it can also increase its own size, which extends the level of immense strength that they already possess, even further beyond the 70 tons that Venom can already lift at normal size, which has allowed him to also go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Thing, Hulk, and Juggernaut. So, Superman would have access to all these abilities in addition to the powers that I had previously mentioned here. However, would fusing Venom with Superman really add anything to him, as Venom at his core is not on par with cosmic level entities? And with that in mind, would it even be possible for Venom to infect Superman if he were to take the risk to bond with a Kryptonian? And I think the answer to both of those questions is a definitive yes. I mean, after all, Venom had once bonded with Captain Marvel, and Superman has had possession of a Yellow Lantern ring while also possessed by Parallax in DC Comics. Plus, like you said, Rico, nothing is stopping us with pushing our imagination as we are basically forcing these fusions. Also, once the symbiote does take control, keep in mind that it's going to force Superman into a physical transformation as an unstoppable monster that will be singularly focusing on removing the morals that have always held Superman back, which will then be expelled in the form of violence, destruction, and taking joy in killing for the immediacy of his victims' deaths. And when you add in all the abilities granted by both characters, what we have is Venom with the wrath of Superman, flying above the people below and raining down all that power upon the world. However, while it is true that Superman is the apex in terms of powers and abilities, we cannot underestimate what benefits Venom is going to have for Superman as well. For example, where Superman is near invulnerable, he can still be injured or even killed. But with Venom, things are not so easy now, as he will be able to rapidly regenerate from any injury that he does suffer from. Now, in addition to having shapeshifting, size manipulation, and strength increase, Symbiotic Superman will also possess the spider sense, which will make him far more formidable than Superman already was, because as we stated earlier, the sense can possibly detect every single attack, but is only limited by the user's speed. But with Superman, that's not exactly the case at all, as he is one of the fastest beings in the DC universe. But in addition to this speed, the spider sense will also be boosted further by Superman's already crazy and enhanced senses. Now, we know this will happen because when Spider-Man obtained the unit power, it gave Peter Parker cosmic awareness, which meant that he was aware of everything going on in the universe at any particular point in time because his spider sense was being enhanced further. Now, Symbiotic Superman won't be able to do that, but we do know that there will be a drastic effect. But this also brings in a sharp relief in the idea that the spider sense is also going to make up for Symbiotic Superman having to split his thought process in a fight and just counter each attack instinctively and simply focus on that opponent. So yeah, this dude is a beast. But before we move on now to Speedforce Juggernaut, I want to address something that has probably already crossed the minds of everyone, and that's how Symbiotic Superman's ability to draw energy from the sun is going to work, since Venom's main weakness is fire and extreme heat, or at least one of his main weaknesses. Well, we know that the closer Superman is to the sun, the more energy he will absorb. However, it's pretty clear that even when flying above the clouds, that he still draws a good portion of energy. But in the rare case that Symbiotic Superman would need to cash in a great deal of energy, how would he do it? Well, since the symbiote can basically act as a liquid of some sorts, it could move to parts of Superman's body to remain safe and just simply separate itself with the influence on Superman's actions. Now, we know this because each symbiote has a mind of their own, desires, ambitions. It can even step in to speak for the host. So what it would do basically is separate and allow Superman to get close enough to the sun to draw a big portion of energy until the process is complete and simply rebond. Now, if we really wanted to get technical, we could even say that because symbiotes can control their own matter on a molecular level and even bond with their host cells, it could even evolve from its original state from the Kryptonian blood cells and complement Superman's need of solar energy and become more resistant to fire and heat. Now, this also explains why every time a symbiotic Superman would trade blows with someone as strong as, say, Wonder Woman and still be able to enlarge, stretch, and morph parts of the host's body and land blows that would not harm the symbiote, because the durability of the symbiote would be further augmented by the density of the Kryptonian structure of Clark's cells. And so, having said too much now, what I want to do here is I want to now transition to Speedforce Juggernaut, because he is not going to be a pushover for Symbiotic Superman whatsoever. So, Speedforce Juggernaut is a fusion of Juggernaut from the Marvel Universe and the Flash from the DC Universe. Now, this might be a little repetitive for those who have watched my Ghost Rider vs. Juggernaut video, as I already did an in-depth rundown on the Juggernaut himself. So we are going to make this section as brief as possible, but if you guys want to know more about the big red guy, then go and watch that video if you want. It's in the description below. Anyway, Juggernaut draws his power from the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which bestows limitless strength and durability on anyone who channels those energies from the Crimson Dimension, as he's among one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe, like Colossus, The Thing, Hyperion, Gladiator, Agent Bob, and even Warworld Hulk. Now, to complement his insane strength, Juggernaut has a ridiculous level of durability, as he's traded blows with the strongest of heavy hitters like Hulk without sustaining any injury at all, and has even shrugged off Thor's God Blast, which, keep in mind, the God Blast is powerful enough to harm even Galactus himself. Now, what makes it even worse is that he can channel the gem's energy to form a force field, which renders him immune to any attack. However, any damage that he does suffer from, Juggernaut can heal instantaneously, as he was once reduced to a mere skeleton and grew back from a single molecule of his own being. Now, in addition to this durability, Juggernaut's magical status allows him to survive without air, food, drink, or sleep, as well as allowing him to fight without his muscles tiring, which gives him seemingly limitless stamina. Now, despite his immense size, his leg muscles allow him to build up a great deal of momentum and travel at high speeds. But once he's in motion and begins to charge, Juggernaut is pretty much impossible to stop, although characters with a great deal of strength, like the Hulk, have been able to redirect his charge attacks, but have not been able to stop him in his tracks entirely, with the only exception being gods and Hulk beefed up on celestial technology. So that pretty much covers Juggernaut, but what would happen if we fused him with the Flash? Well, to know that, we have to talk about what the Speedforce is, which is an extra-dimensional energy that exists within the DC multiverse that gives all of what are called the speedsters their powers. Now, the powers that these individuals can derive from the Speed Force are, of course, the first and most obvious, super speed, and can generate it with every single step that is taken once they begin to run. Now, the speed of a speedster or a Flash is very well documented, as we have seen several feats, whether it's Barry Allen or Wally West, that their speed is pretty much limitless. Now, just to give you an idea on how fast they are, Barry Allen during the Crisis event was able to outrun the Black Racer for 20 years, who, by the way, serves as the entity of death within the Speed Force, who seeks to merge those who die with it. And Wally West, who is believed to be the fastest of all the Flashes, can easily break the speed of light, and like Barry, can enter the Speed Force itself and manipulate time, as we see in the Flashpoint event, where he traveled back in time to save his mother and repeat the same process again to let her die. However, it's really important to keep in mind that these limits are not often pushed, as Barry and Wally's speeds can be catastrophic to the environments that they inhabit while running. But near limitless speed is not the only thing afforded to speedsters, as they also possess enhanced reflexes, agility, endurance, a minor healing factor, the ability to generate and throw arcs of lightning as an offensive attack, or rotate their arms at a high enough speed to create whirlwinds or mini tornadoes, and even slow down their perception of time to the point where everything pretty much appears still. In addition to this, the Flash can also steal the speed, motion, or momentum from others who are either speedsters or those who have forms of super speed. And it's been repeatedly demonstrated that the Flash can vibrate the molecules of his body at a high enough frequency that he can phase through solid objects and even dimensional barriers. And while in this state, he is able to perfectly breathe and be immune to all viruses. Somehow, and can in fact vibrate at such a high rate that light doesn't reflect off of him, which renders him invisible to the human eye, and when in combat can be extremely deadly, as he can basically break apart the molecules that make up the structure of most living beings, as we have seen with Barry and Wally's arch nemesis, Reverse Flash. Now, those who also wield the Speed Force can also focus the dimensional energies and perform the infinite mass punch. Now, this only works when the Flash is running at a speed near the speed of light and gain the mass equal to that speed and deliver a punch that is equivalent to a white dwarf star. And when used in practice, this punch was powerful enough to send a metahuman from one continent to the other. And so this is basically the power set that we're going to be dealing with here when it comes to Speedforce Juggernaut. And to me, Speedforce Juggernaut is someone who is channeling the energies of a god and an immense energy source that is branched in an entire multiverse, and the upper limits of both power sources are not exactly known. Conversely, once Juggernaut starts moving, he cannot be stopped, and the Flash can move at speeds greater than light. But that's all these characters are capable of on their own. Speedforce Juggernaut is when you put everything that we listed so far, but pushed to the absolute extreme. So now we don't only have just unlimited levels of strength and durability, but now unlimited levels of speed. And keep in mind that he cannot be stopped while moving at these levels of speed. And so from that point of view, it's pretty obvious that it's Juggernaut with the powers of the Flash, and it's insane what he can do. But leaving it at just that does not justify what this character truly is capable of. For example, while the Speed Force does supply the Flash with enough speed to do some amazing things like moving back and forward in time, he still needs nourishment to maintain his metabolism, including air to breathe. Meaning, without such things, he would eventually be overcome with fatigue and be forced to recover. In addition to this, he also cannot survive in harsh environments and can technically be killed in any way that you or I can be killed, unlike Juggernaut, who does not suffer fatigue and has no need for oxygen, food, or water, and can easily withstand nuclear explosions as well as the destruction of entire planets. So, in contrast, Speedforce Juggernaut would be able to harness the Speedforce to such an extent that he would not only be able to run as long as he wants to, but push limits that most Flashes would not often take due to their fear of harming the environments and the people around them. However, because this character is empowered by the Gem of Sidorak, the various abilities granted by the users also come with a desire to carry out acts of destruction and chaos, meaning this character is following that exact charter while also possessing the Speed Force. So, what you are probably realizing is that Juggernaut not only takes away these weaknesses and limitations, but also provides power that is quite immense in its own right alone. Now, the Flash has proven to be extremely powerful himself, with his arsenal of arc lightning, intangibility, and especially the infinite mass punch, which again unleashes the power of a white dwarf star. On the other side of the coin, however, Juggernaut has demonstrated that his punches are so strong that they are registered as an 8 magnitude earthquake on the Richter scale. Now clearly, the infinite mass punch is a far more powerful attack than anything we have seen Juggernaut demonstrate offensively. However, because the Flash on his own has a clear finite level of human strength, he is not able to perform this attack unless he reaches a certain speed. But that's not the case with Speedforce Juggernaut, as he has an almost immeasurable level of strength, meaning that his punch would be far stronger than a white dwarf star and is a crazy and OP offensive attack that the Speedforce Juggernaut could use to remove anyone from the battlefield and even kill them. Plus, would not have to perform such an attack in the form of just a punch. So if he were to charge, as Juggernaut usually does, as his primary means of attack and just keep moving, he would build up enough speed to perform the same kind of attack but amplified many times over. Now, the reason I think it's important to bring up Juggernaut's charge attack is because Juggernaut has been able to defeat high-level threats with this attack like a Celestial and even Sidorak himself, which speaks to how powerful I guess this infinite mass charge is compared to Flash's infinite mass punch. And so getting into the final part of our discussion now on Speedforce Juggernaut, let's discuss personality and intelligence. And the reason why is because something that might be most often mistaken or forgotten is that this is not just a series where we are basically taking someone and granting them new powers from another character. No, it's literally what the title says. Fusion, meaning we are not only just seeing powers being merged, but their minds as well. Now, the way this works is that we take the most dominant of traits from both sides and sort of place them in one single mind. So this guy, keep in mind, is not Kane Marco or Barry Allen. It's Speedforce Juggernaut, a totally made up character that is based off of actual characters, and the same is to be said for Symbiotic Superman as well. Anyway, with that in mind, when it comes to personality traits, that's personal when you are attached to a character, especially depending on what you like. However, while I do like Barry, I'm gonna have to say that Juggernaut is leaps and bounds personality-wise, as he is more colorful, threatening, and completely over the top. Now, Barry is awesome, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like comparing a Tim Curry and a Tom Selleck performance. You know you're going to take Tom more seriously, and it's probably going to be better, but you also know that Curry will be far more entertaining and leave a much bigger impact on you. Now, something else to note here is that when Colossus was bestowed with the powers of the Juggernaut in the story Fear itself, Kitty, his girlfriend, had stated that becoming the new avatar for Sidorak would kill who Colossus was. And in truth, that's what happens, as when he first arrives on the scene to take on Kurth, the Breaker of Stone, he comments that he doesn't want to stop, and he has this new desire to conquer and eliminate things. Now, while Colossus was able to fight these urges for a while, the issue was that when Colossus was found in a cave filled with blood and body parts, he was beginning to succumb to his darker side and reflect the essence of what it meant to be the harbinger of Sidorak. And so even though Juggernaut takes the advantage personality-wise overall, there is still one thing he does not possess that the Flash does, and that's intelligence. In fact, It's a great deal of intelligence that most people are not often aware of, as Barry and Wally West are some of the most intelligent people in the DC universe and are perfect examples of what a true thinking man's character is. In addition to this, the Speedforce allows users to access their brains at superhuman levels further than processing actual information, as Barry and Wally have been able to test impossible theories, understand difficult equations, and run trial and error on their choices, which means that we have a destructive force who is also quite smart and would remove the strategical limitations that Juggernaut had always had and allow him to make smarter choices and come up with more devious plans on how to take out his opponents in battle. Okay guys, so there you have it, both Symbiotic Superman and Speedforce Juggernaut. Now it's time to decide who would win this battle. But before I do, I briefly want to mention once again, as always, that whoever I choose is not fact. It's strictly opinion, and I'm not expecting everybody to agree with me, and that's fine, especially because this is an experiment and furthermore a fusion battle. But regardless, I will ask for all of you to keep an open mind and respect each other's thoughts and opinions as well as mine in the comments below, and please be kind to one another, no matter how you feel about the topic. Now, with all that said, I think before we discuss this battle, we need to bring up some obvious things along with some ground rules. So, under normal circumstances, Superman's power is still massive compared to most of the mortals in the DC universe. However, the fact remains that because the writers can make him as strong as they want him to be by using the energies of the sun to become stronger, kinda skews things a bit. And so to balance the scales, this battle is actually going to take place on the Earth. Now the other reason I want to do this is to negate people's argument of throwing his opponents into the sun, as the purpose of discussing their powers would be pointless. Now, adding this stipulation will also make things more interesting, as it allows Speedforce Juggernaut to take advantage of the planet's gravitational pull and the friction that the planet's surface will also provide, as speedsters in general have to have friction to run and use the Speedforce. Now, with this stipulation in place, let's talk about who wins. So, in order to answer this question, we have to begin by looking at several areas that will probably inspire all kinds of debate, with the first being strength and pure power. Now, in all honesty, I do not know who is stronger between these two. However, I know many are going to argue that Superman is, but I think Juggernaut is just as powerful. And the reason why is because Juggernaut has been able to stand toe-to-toe with beings who have demonstrated that they are just as strong and capable as Superman, with the two best examples being Hulk and Hyperion. Furthermore, even if we was to say that Symbiotic Superman was just a tad bit stronger, which the evidence would lead most to believe that he is more capable, there is still the fact that Juggernaut is unstoppable, and even more so now with the Speedforce. Now, the debate on whether Superman can actually stop the Juggernaut is a debate all on its own, but I really think it depends on the situation. And what I mean by this is that if we had Superman, who has a nearly limitless source of solar energy to draw on, he would definitely, with total ease, stop the Juggernaut, or Speedforce Juggernaut for that matter. But because we are keeping him at normal levels of power, I don't think he could, especially if Juggernaut has the Speedforce. Now yes, we did see Hulk stop Juggernaut and beat him in the same exact conflict. However, this was not just the Incredible Hulk. This was Hulk, whose already insane power was augmented by the villain Apocalypse with celestial technology, which meant that the benefit of Apocalypse's modifications allowed the Hulk to not rely on just anger to increase his power. However, because Warworld Hulk, who is most often believed to be the strongest version of the Hulk, was not able to stop him but used his momentum and throw him out of the way, leads me to believe that Symbiotic Superman would maybe do the same. And with Venom, could even do something similar to Celestial Hulk by augmenting his strength, and maybe perhaps changing his size would help a great deal. But even then, I also find it hard to believe that it would actually be possible to stop Speedforce Juggernaut, as he is moving at such high speeds. Now, very much like strength, I think it's impossible to definitively state which one of these characters is faster traveling at top speeds, but I am willing to bet that Speedforce Juggernaut is faster. Now, what I'm basing this on is that Flash has shown that he is fast enough to move through time, and while it's true that Superman was able to fly Darkseid to the edge of the universe, this was only due to the fact that he was so close to the sun, which gave him a huge boost of power. Plus, most modern incarnations of Superman are 1, no longer as fast as Flash, and 2, cannot move through time with the speed Superman is supplied with, like Flash, unless it's someone like Superboy Prime, as he is modeled after the Silver Age version of Superman. However, we must also take into consideration on Symbiotic Superman's spider sense, which will be almost impossible to avoid for even Speedforce Juggernaut, as anything he does will only alert Symbiotic Superman before he can even land a punch, or much less get close enough to actually land any kind of attack. However, there is a way for Speedforce Juggernaut to actually take advantage of the spider sense by neutralizing his agility and speed, and that's the ability to steal the speed of Symbiotic Superman, which would also increase the speed of Speedforce Juggernaut as well. At that point, I think it comes down to whose attack power, durability, and healing are more advanced, and in the end, who is more likely to take advantage of one or the other's vulnerable weaknesses. And I think this favors Speedforce Juggernaut, because while Symbiotic Superman's molecular structure is far stronger than your average Venom, it does not mean that those weaknesses are no longer present. It just means that they are harder to exploit. However, Speedforce Juggernaut is perfectly equipped to take advantage of Symbiotic Superman's key weaknesses to vibration frequencies and sound, whether if it's by way of performing thunderclaps at near light speed, or using his vibration effects, which would break down his molecular structure and just scatter his molecules, and ultimately that would spell doom for him. I mean, sure, he may get some good shots on Speedforce Juggernaut, and he may even be able to evade him for a while, but anything Symbiotic Superman does to Speedforce Juggernaut will be ineffective, as he can negate any attack that's thrown at him. Like, if he were to use his ice breath, for example, Speedforce Juggernaut could just phase right through it, or he could just as easily bust out with his brutality and unparalleled strength. Heat vision would just be rendered by the force field, and cutting him up is pointless, because essentially what Symbiotic Superman is dealing with is someone who is basically indestructible, with his healing virtually instantaneous, as it all stems from a source of magic. Now, this also presents an interesting contrast with the battle Superman had with Doomsday, which is a huge sticking point, as Superman does suffer fatigue during a long fight, which would weaken him. And even if Venom would be able to prolong the battle and keep things interesting, I think Speedforce Juggernaut's abilities are just too much for a Symbiotic Superman. Now, I don't want to sound like that I am dismissing Symbiotic Superman as weak, or as if killing him is an easy task. Speedforce Juggernaut is going to be in for a brutal and bloody fight, and he may even find things going south at times pretty quickly. But the obvious point is that theoretically, we don't have to come up with any clever or genius ways for Speedforce Juggernaut to win. He just has to make sure that he's dead in the process. And when you are such a relentless force, I see no problem in him doing that. So I'm gonna have to give the win to my man, Speedforce Juggernaut. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think of this idea of a fusion versus series, because I'll be honest, I have been having the time of my life just talking about and coming up with fusions and creating fusions with guys like Rico Chico Malico and Crossover Guy. Believe me, once you start getting into fusion, it is so much fun, and that's all I have really been doing lately for the past like 2 months now is like fusion after fusion after fusion. So yeah, I cross my fingers and I hope you guys like it. Plus, I want to know down in the comments, who do you guys think would win between a Symbiotic Superman and Speedforce Juggernaut? Also, if you guys do like the idea of fusion, and if you have any kind of suggestions for any fusion or battle ideas, then feel free to list them, because I am curious to see what you guys will come up with. But anyway, if you guys are new here on Dream Battles, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoyed this video, drop a like and comment for more videos just like this one. Mike G off your screen, stay tuned for the next battle. And remember, fusion is love, fusion is life. See you guys soon.